Welcome back, travelers. Today we're talking about the Gathering Storm Chapter 5. Now, in this chapter, it goes over the adventure that Ral gets to go through alongside Hekara, of course, as they go through the Selesnyan Guild. I like that this one, it starts off with Ral basically talking about Hekara as if she were his pet. But at the same time all that's happening, he also mentions how Bolas had helped him. That Bolas had been secretly funding Elias's rise to fame through poetry and stuff like that. And through doing that, it kind of shows that that's why Ral was following through with what Bolas was asking him to do. There was those benefits there. But that's more just in his past, in his thoughts, his memories. What's currently happening is that Hekara is literally just like she's a child. She's a child that just loves to just go and she'll see something and she'll be like, ooh, shiny! And then she'll go off and do something else or break something. And that throughout this whole time, Ral feels like he's just babysitting her. And she winds up informing him that there is somebody watching them, following them. And that she's been following them for a while. And that she's very eager to kill them. But of course, Ral's like, don't kill anybody. Please don't kill anyone. No, stop. Don't do that. Please don't. And so, turns out it's Lavinia. Of course it's Lavinia. She's been tailing him, basically just making sure nobody else is tailing him. And the two of them begin to basically just kind of catch each other up. She warns him the Selesnyans are probably planning something. She doesn't know what it is. And then he tells her to please look into Vraska, because she's apparently the Queen of Golgari now, and he needs some information on that because he's going to go meet her eventually. Probably in the next chapter, I'd say. Ral and Hekara make it to Vitu-Ghazi. They go. Ral sees a guard. The guard is a centaur, of course, and I love the fact that Ral's like, please don't ask him. And she's like, what? Hekara's like, what do you mean? Why shouldn't I ask him to write him? He's like, because if you write him, he will kick you in the head. I know this from experience. It's like, yes, one red to another red. Don't do that thing that looks like it'd be fun, because it'll wind up hurting you. I know from experience. So instead of going to see Tristani, Ral and Hekara are meeting Amara Tandris. Amara being basically the elf that represents the Selesnya Guild more than any of the other characters. Like she's basically like one of the voices for the Tristani, who themselves are the voice for Matt Selesnya. But one thing I noticed is that I'm guessing the reason that these were not included in War of the Spark is because War of the Spark was intended to be more of a novel meant for everyone, if that makes any sense. It was supposed to be like Endgame. If you weren't really into reading, it wasn't an extremely complex and extremely deep or meaningful storyline. It kind of just gave you the story beats, and if it was something that was interesting looking, like the inside of Rakdos' chambers, or something else like that, something more visual, then there was more information on that. That's why War of the Spark probably had Rat and Teo, because it was able to create this sort of exposition that was able to move more flowingly. In this case, in the case of the Gathering Storm, there are slower moments. There are moments where the characters are just talking to each other and kind of just trying to communicate, because they're all trying to make negotiations. And I guess because negotiations don't really go very well, they decided to just kind of put that back. Kind of like how in the episode 1 of Star Wars, there's trade negotiations and all this other stuff going on, where there's a lot of talking and a lot of ideas getting thrown around without there actually being any sense of progress, really. And that's kind of what happens here, is that it's very slow going. The events kind of lead into each other. But something very interesting does take place, and this is where this was really cool, because I would have been wondering earlier, how did Bolas try to infiltrate the Selesnyans? What exactly did he do? Because how is he going to persuade or corrupt them? Because they're they're the exact opposite of him. How is he going to get into their ranks? So Amara is basically very, very cautious. You can tell she is up, she's tense, and she's trying to figure out, okay, guys, just wait. I'll tell you what's going on. Just need to give me some time. We need to get to a place, and then we can talk there. And Ral's like, okay, I guess. And so she avoids all these soldiers, and she eventually gets there. And she, you may have noticed that we have upped our security quite a bit. And he's like, yeah, well, that's because we have a guy who thinks that it's a better idea for us to basically just bolster our forces. His name is Glade Master Garo. Now, Glade Master meaning that he was a master of a glade, so I don't really see why he's supposed to be some big soldier fighter guy. But apparently he's a very militant elf. And so Ral is like, okay, well, so it's you and him. Are you the two main factions in here? She's like, no. There's no factions here. There's this harmony of Selesnya. There's none of that. Don't worry about that. There's no civil war gonna break out. I'm gonna make sure of it. I don't want there to be any civil war. I want there to be peace and harmony because we're Selesnyans. And Ral's like, sure. So I guess we need to just find some kind of negotiation with this guy. And Amara's like, yeah, pretty much. Basically, Amara knows that there are planeswalkers. Basically, everyone on Ravnica is being informed of the existence of planeswalkers. And Amara's like, yeah, it's not too surprising to me. For some reason, I think I might know. I knew it somehow in the back of my head. The reason for that is because Jace erased her memories of the fact that he was a planeswalker, because he had told her in an older story. I want to say it was during the whole Maze's End, the Dragon's Maze thing. Maze's End is the name of the card. The Dragon's Maze. That's whole story. Jace wound up telling her, but he erased her memory, so she didn't remember it. But now she knows, so it doesn't really matter. But while this is happening, an elf girl comes in, and she was like this little waitress girl basically, and she goes up to Amara, and Ral immediately knows what's going on because he sees her face shift, he sees her reach behind her back, he's like, oh snap, and there's a knife being just like, nyeh. There's an assassination attempt on Amara's life! They're trying to kill her! Garo is trying to kill her! And Ral's like, no! So he doesn't have his weapons because they took him away, so he just kind of like stuns her, but doesn't do anything because it's just like he's just like static. So Hekara, who had no weapons on her, suddenly takes out a dagger and slices her throat and kills the assassin. It's like, what? How? Where? When? Why? And so later, a few paragraphs later, we basically find out Hekara is a razor witch, that's what they're called. Razor witches can basically materialize knives and daggers and such, basically just out of their hands. Like they can just poof, and they have throwing knives. It's super cool. Like as an ability, it means you always have a weapon on hand. And then he notes that like all of her hands are cut up because they're double-sided, they're double-edged blades. It's very interesting, a very cool like little mini thing to just kind of throw in there, that she can throw knives. This guy comes in. He's like basically ready to just tackle Ral, but they're able to get around it. They knock him down. They subdue him. And Amara's like, okay guys, what is going on? Why are you guys trying to? What are you guys trying to do? And he goes, oh well, we're here because Glade Master Garo just told us that you've been killed. Amara's been murdered by Ral Zarek. And she's like, well, I'm not. There was an attempt, but it was not successful. I'm not dead. And the other guys are still trying to get in, and Hekara's trying to hold the door closed. Amara seals it, right, because she's basically like a wood mage. She can bend the wood to her will. And they're like, let's get out. And so she opens up the window once again with the wood, because they were like little like vines and stuff. But she opens it up, Hekara cartwheels out, and then she makes little handholds for her and Ral. So they get all the way back to Ral's weapons. He gets them. He's excited. His hair goes back up. He's like, yes, good. So the three of them, they go and they make it to this like meeting area where Garo is. And Garo's like, what? Everybody kill them. And so everybody, there's two guards, a woman with red hair, and then there's Garo. The woman with red hair will probably have more to her. But Ral notices that Garo has like worn features, that his eyes seem kind of sunk in. There's something off about him, and that he's definitely got like the bad guy look, apparently, I guess. And so there's this big fight, everybody's going, Hekara takes care of the guards, Garo is fighting against Ral, and then the red-haired girl who's the elementalist winds up fighting Amara. So you got all these characters that are going at it with each other, they're trying to fight each other, trying to defeat all the stuff going on, and then Garo gets up close to Ral. Ral's able to defeat him, killing him, and Garo's last words are basically, I'll be seeing you soon. But when he says it, Ral realizes that it's Nicol Bolas. Nicol Bolas has gained control of this elf man. Naturally, Bolas would have gaining control abilities, but he had gained control of this guy, and that's why that was his foothold in Selesnya, was this guy, the Glade Master, who was going to make a coup, basically, and take over the guild. So if it wasn't for Ral Zarek interfering, Amara would be dead, very dead, and the Selesnyans would have been under his control, Bolas's control, and they would have had a huge army. Like an army that would have been more than enough to take down everybody else. Like that's the fact that it was that close, it was that moment, is super cool, because if you think about it, the Selesnyans, while they weren't huge, they were the ones. It was the Vitu-Ghazi itself that was able to take down that statue of Bolas. And that statue of Bolas was one of the more oppressive things in Ravnica. Something or somebody else would have had to do that instead, because they wouldn't have had access to Selesnya. It would have changed the whole entire landscape of War of the Spark, which I thought was really cool. With Garo defeated, the Selesnyans are now safe. They have, basically, Amara says, yeah, we're going to be there. We're going to work with you. I have some in-house things to do that I need to clean up, but you have the Selesnyans on your side. So, like I said, Selesnya was pretty, well, actually, it was much more difficult to do because of the fact that they were already basically divided, and it wasn't until Garo's defeat that now Selesnya can be rejoined and have a unified front. So, all that said, that's this chapter. It was really cool because it was literally all just Ral going through the Selesnyans' territory and getting their help. Share this with your friends if you haven't already, especially if they haven't read the story yet. Maybe they'll want to start reading the story. It's really cool. I feel like it kind of really gives a good foundation for War of the Spark to stand on, because the characters feel like they have a bit more pull to them, especially like characters like Hekara, who were just kind of just thrown in War of the Spark because they were killed apparently at the end of this book. But you get the idea. All that stuff. It's so much fun. I'm looking forward to the next chapter, and there'll be more Mario Maker story mode stuff going on. We're going to do the entirety of story mode, but until all that stuff happens, travel well.